Penny moved along the clearing's edge, using trees and roots for cover. The predator had walked straight to the center instead, sat down. Not alert, just waiting. Maybe for me, she thought. If it's not worried, I shouldn't be either. From here, she could see the whole space differently. The ground was trampled hard in multiple directions. No fire pits, no permanent traces. But other things. Drag marks, multiple foot sizes mixed together, organized. Stains that weren't dirt or moss. Dried, dark patches. Not fresh, but not old either. All the tracks led away from the clearing in the same direction. She walked to the predator, sat beside it, waited. Loaded her crossbow just in case. Branches cracked. She spun, crossbow up, finger on the trigger. The predator hadn't reacted at all, which somehow made it worse. Another crack. She prepared to fire. Roland tramped through the bushes, Eldrin and Lymphocytus right behind him. "Don't scare me like that!" Her voice came out sharper than intended. "I almost shot your head off." "Hey, Penny, there you are, petting cats." Roland sounded cheerful, oblivious. "What do you mean, scare? Can't walk in the forest now?" "You're calling that thing a cat?" She laughed, tension draining. "Lympho was super worried you'd gotten lost," Roland teased. Lymphocytus bristled. "You're saying that like I should be ashamed for worrying something happened to her?" He turned to Penny. "Hey, we found the parchment you got from the merchant. Eldrin might decipher it better than we did." Eldrin stopped at the clearing's edge, didn't come closer. His gaze caught on the parchment when Lymphocytus mentioned it, brief but noticeable. Eldrin tilted his head, like trying to remember something buried. "You dropped that there." His voice was raspy. "Not by accident." He looked at Lymphocytus. "The question isn't whether I can read it. The question is whether you want to know who drew it." The predator made a low sound, like a warning of sort. "Of course we want to know." Lymphocytus straightened up, that academic confidence surfacing. "According to hermeneutics, the author can be the interpretive key for unlocking hidden messages." Eldrin smiled crookedly. "Wise words. Dangerous words." He extended his hand slowly. "I can read it. Here. Now. Won't take long. But when I do, you're not just lost travelers anymore. You'll know something. And what knows you know," he left it hanging, "will notice." His hand stayed out, waiting. Lymphocytus gave him the parchment without hesitation. "I always want to know more. Sometimes more than's good for me. Priests say curiosity isn't a virtue. That's because someone else decided what they can know. I don't have that restriction. I want to know everything." Eldrin took it carefully. His fingers were filthy, resin and dirt, but moved gently, like the material mattered more than content. He didn't unroll it completely, just enough to see structure, symbols, order. His expression changed immediately, attention absorbed. Roland approached Penny quietly. "You getting hungry? And tired? Because I am." Penny glanced up at him. I could eat. But I stopped being tired when we met Eldrin and Kat." She giggled at the name. "When we met them, it was like my brain reset. We should probably try hunting, though, even if I'm terrible at it. And we haven't exactly seen animals." Roland let out a quiet breath and rubbed his neck. "Yeah, I'm not great at hunting either." "I thought that's all you nobles did." She tilted her head at him. He laughed at her remark. "Well, you need hunting grounds for that, or someone who invites you to theirs. I'm good at fishing, but haven't seen a stream in forever, and we don't have poles anyway." Penny nudged a stone along the ground with her boot. There's a lot we didn't think about. Next time, we'll plan better. Maybe not jump on the first rumor we hear. So you think there'll be a next time? Roland looked almost hopeful when he said it. You're not getting rid of me that easily, she said, and smirked. Eldrin finished reading, stood beside Lymphocytus, who'd been watching impatiently. Up close, he smelled of old man sweat, dried earth, urine. Lymphocytus had to work not to gag, tears forming. You didn't buy a map. Eldrin's voice was calm. You bought a promise. He traced with his nail, following lines that weren't paths but sequences, markers, distances, pauses. This doesn't show where you go, shows when. When enough blood's been spilled, when someone's missing, when something waits. He looked up at Lymphocytus. You slept in a poorly chosen place, near where things are gathered before being moved elsewhere. The predator raised its head, gaze fixed toward the clearing's far edge. Eldrin handed the parchment back, turned to the others like he'd been listening to their conversation too. If you're going to hunt, do it now, before what uses this place notices you, understood? He pointed faintly southeast toward denser forest. Better camps there. Not safe, just less stupid. More animals, though. They're rare here. They moved away from the clearing without looking back more than necessary. The urge to check kept surfacing, but giving in wouldn't help. Roland had been walking beside Lymphocytus for a while before speaking. So what spells can you actually do, Lympho? He asked, sounding genuinely curious for once. We saw the light thing, the freezing, and those projectiles. Lymphocytus adjusted his robe, clearly uncomfortable with the attention. Freezing people isn't something I learned, it just happened in the moment. Roland glanced over at him. Just happened? Magic works like that sometimes. Lymphocytus searched for the words as they walked, trying to explain something he'd never quite articulated before. It's not just words and hand movements. It's more like having an ear for music. It comes from inside, and you've trained the muscle memory, built up references, and suddenly everything clicks. Penny had slowed her pace to listen, drifting closer to them. That's pretty impressive, Roland said. It's demanding, Lymphocytus corrected quickly. Takes a physical toll, and sometimes it goes wrong, really wrong. Sometimes unexpected things happen. He paused, remembering. Like when I tried to make Eldrin more friendly toward you, Penny? I understand social relations on paper, but the magic has to come from inside. That's why everything got strange. But it worked, Roland pointed out. The cat was about to eat Penny. Then it didn't. Penny stopped walking for a second, realization hitting. That's why the predator had been so friendly. She caught up to Lymphocytus, touched his arm lightly. You've got more inside than you think. He didn't respond, but something in his posture eased, less rigid, maybe. The forest thickened as they climbed. After a few hours, the terrain shifted from sloped to seriously steep, ground getting drier, less trampled, a place that actively discouraged passage. Eldrin stopped, listened to the wind, nodded once and gestured for them to continue. This would work as a pit stop. They were setting up camp when Penny noticed Roland moving wrong. He was gathering wood but kept pausing, hand going to his neck. His face was too pale except for fever flush across his cheeks. The wounds, the bite on his neck, the cut on his side, had started looking angry. Roland, sit down. I'm fine. You're sweating and stumbling. Sit! Lymphocytus came over immediately, examined the wounds with careful attention. Not life-threatening, but these need cleaning and proper dressing. We need moss and clean bandages. I'll hunt and look for water, Penny offered. Lymphocytus was already tearing a strip from his undertunic. I'll handle this. Eldrin watched every movement as Lymphocytus cleaned and dressed the wounds. When it was finished, he nodded once, almost like approval, while muttering something about forest remedies, none of it particularly helpful. Penny disappeared into the trees with the predator. They didn't move like hunter and tool, more like two creatures on a mission. The predator led without rushing, stopped occasionally to wait. When it happened, it was fast. A bear, larger than Penny would have wanted to face openly, went down clean. Her bolt placement was perfect. The satisfaction hit pure and uncomplicated. She worked methodically, inexperienced but careful, nothing wasted. When she finished, she let the predator take its share first, earned it. She didn't find water but hoped Lymphocytus had managed. When she returned, fire burned low and controlled. Roland sat against a tree, breathing easier, more present. Holy shit, Penny. Roland's eyes went to the meat. That's incredible. The cat helped. She gestured to the predator. Couldn't have done it alone. Still, Lymphocytus added, looking genuinely impressed. That's excellent work. They ate without rushing, let their bodies catch up with what they'd been demanding. The food hit different after 2 days on adrenaline, not just fuel, but actual satisfaction. Eldrin sat away from the fire's center. He took food without ceremony, broke it in smaller pieces, ate like someone who didn't know when the next meal would come but wasn't worried. Sometimes he looked up, listening to something nobody else heard. The predator stretched out near Penny after the meal, head resting on paws, eyes open. The forest had gone still in a different way, occupied with other things, it seemed. It was 2 or 3 hours left of daylight. Is it worth pushing on, or should we camp here and rest? Lymphocytus looked at Eldrin. Maybe better to reach the place at night than at dawn. What do you think? We take them while they're sleeping, Penny added, like they did to us. Eldrin didn't answer immediately. He looked at the fire first, then the forest beyond the light's edge. When he spoke, his voice was calm, almost dry. The darkness ahead isn't the same darkness as here. He moved his hand faintly in the air, feeling for something invisible. At dawn, those who watch move. At night, those who own the place move. The difference isn't who sees you, it's what sees you. He looked at each of them in turn. Push on now, you reach the edge in darkness. You won't be alone, even if you don't notice. Camp now, you reach it when the world shifts. That's dangerous too, but it's danger you can anticipate. I would rest, but I'm not the one going first. They decided to camp, sleep now, wake and move so they'd arrive at dawn. Setting up camp without tents or bedrolls, the dog creatures had taken those, required improvisation. Roland gathered what dry leaves and moss he could find for insulation from the cold ground. Lymphocytus worked on camouflaging their sleeping spots with branches and undergrowth, muttering to himself about sight lines. Penny checked the perimeter, noting escape routes without consciously deciding to. They put out the fire. Visibility mattered more than warmth. The camouflage worked. You'd have to be looking directly at them to spot the sleeping spots, but it wasn't complete protection. Anyone searching carefully would find them eventually. Same watch schedule as before? Roland asked, already knowing the answer. You first, me second, Penny confirmed. Lympho takes the long shift at the end since he doesn't sleep the same way. Lymphocytus nodded, already settling into his spot. The predator circled once and lay down near Penny, close enough for warmth but not touching. Roland sat with his back against a tree, sword across his lap, scanning darkness he could barely see through. The forest made sounds, branches settling, distant calls, wind through leaves. Normal sounds, probably. He'd know if they stopped being normal. At least, he hoped he would. Nothing moved, nothing approached. But time felt shorter than it should. Roland didn't mind being alone on watch. Nights were when he let himself think about other lives, ones where he wasn't constantly proving himself with a sword. Tonight, he played with the idea of being an artist, painting frescoes in churches and castles, traveling the world. The fantasy was pleasant enough that his watch ended before he'd really noticed time passing. He went to wake Penny and nearly jumped when he saw the predator lying on her. When he shook her shoulder, she jerked awake, reflex more than fear. The predator lay heavy against her side, warm, completely relaxed. It opened one eye when Roland approached, assessed him, then closed it again. Roland handed over the watch without words. Night was deep now, but not black. The forest held its breath. Penny took the same spot Roland had occupied. The predator stayed close, not guarding, but attentive. It reacted sometimes to things she couldn't hear, ears swiveling, tail going still. After a while, she noticed something subtler than sound. The wind shifted and brought a faint smell of old iron, wet earth, rancid fat. Time felt pressing, like night didn't quite want to end. Penny told herself she was fairly safe with the predator and her crossbow close. She wondered if the predator really was a female. She hadn't checked out of respect. But it was hard with felines. You couldn't tell just by looking unless they were lions with manes. Same with foxes. All foxes looked female. She wondered if animals wondered the same about humanoids. Maybe the predator didn't know if she was male or female. Or maybe it didn't care. She heard branches moving wrong, from something large moving through them, trees bending aside like someone walked straight through without caring they were there. A deep, slow crack, like wet wood giving up. Guys? Then the smell hit. Not rotten, exactly. More like old skin, sweat never washed away, rancid fat in fabric that had dried and gotten wet again. A warm animal stench carrying something human but without shame. It smelled like someone had lived in their own body too long. Guys, I'm serious right now! Crashing sounds from the forest. Lymphocytus woke, stuck his head out of their camouflaged sleeping spot, saw Penny's face and nearly had to drag Roland up. He was snoring loudly. They reached her position as trees started swaying visibly. Something was coming straight toward them. The predator growled. Then they saw it. A monster stepped through the trees, sniffing like it had caught scent of something. It was nearly 10 feet tall, massive in a way that felt wrong, like its body had kept growing without ever considering balance. Shoulders broad and heavy, arms disproportionately long. Muscles not defined but compressed like wet clay dried wrong. Its skin was pale gray with yellow tones, rust-colored and blotched where dirt and old wounds had ground into the pores. It looked thick, but it wasn't fat, just meat piled onto bone. The back hunched slightly, the neck almost too short so the head jutted forward. The face was broad and flat, jaw dominating everything else. Teeth uneven and worn, some stained brown. Lips dry and cracked. Around the mouth were dried remnants of something that had once been food. The eyes were small for the head, deep set beneath heavy brows. From this distance, their color was hard to tell. Something between gray and yellow, like old glass. The gaze lacked sharpness, but not presence. Clothes hung loose and wrong. Straps, torn fabric, leather rubbed raw into the skin, metal buckles dark with dirt and rust. Everything looked used until it stopped working, then used anyway. In its hand, it carried a massive branch with iron spikes hammered into it. They screamed and grabbed their weapons. The monster kept sniffing, took some clumsy steps toward them. "Wagwan! Oh, you humans?" the monster called out. They clustered together, nobody wanting to stand first. The predator growled beside them, ears back, hackles raised. "Only orcs come here usually, and them little annoying ones," the monster went on. Penny and Lymphocytus protested they weren't human. Same thing, the monster waved dismissively. "Taste bitter, them little annoying ones. Orc taste like shit." Its eyes fixed on them, tongue sliding over its lips. "Human though, num num num, tastes like pig. Elf tastes like chicken," the monster said, savoring the thought. Roland, the least paralyzed, forced himself to speak. "You can't eat us, you realize that?" He pointed suddenly at Penny. "And especially not her. She's a halfling, and they're poisonous. Trust me, I saw someone try once, died instantly." The monster scratched its head with the tree branch. "You not eat? Then what I get? I gotta eat, you see." It jabbed the branch toward them. "Ogre gotta eat. If not eat, ogre dead." Lymphocytus kept staring at the ground. What do you like to eat? Besides humans," he stammered. "And elves," Roland added bitterly. What I like, the monster muttered, thinking. After a moment, it looked toward the predator. "Maybe that cat you got?" "Not the old bungo," the monster pointed at Eldred with his branch. "He smells like outhouse." The predator hissed in response. "The cat's poisonous too," Penny retorted quickly. "The bungo as well." The monster stood there thinking, head tilted as if weighing the idea. Wild boar maybe then. But them mad fast. Them always see me coming. I try make traps, but..." The monster raised its massive hands, fingers thick as salt mills. "No good for tying." Roland leaned forward quickly. "Penny can get you wild boar," he said. "She's really good at hunting." Penny shot him a furious look and kicked his shin. "Oh, you hunt, little one?" the monster said with interest. "You help Grubnook get wild boar. Maybe I not eat human, elf, and cat. You choose. It's a ogre eat everyone world out here after all." They huddled together to discuss. "I'm not going alone with that thing," Penny hissed. "None of us want you to, but..." Roland began. "Then we all go," Penny said. "Penny," Lymphocytus protested. "All of us or I don't go at all," Penny said firmly. The monster raised a hand to stop them. No, the monster interrupted. "I know humans. Sneak around, stab from behind. You no good. Elf no good either. Too quick, climb tree, shoot at eyes. I know you tactics. Only little one come." "Can I at least take the cat?" Penny asked. "She's better at tracking than I am. Then maybe it's a deal?" The monster shrugged. "I see no harm. Take cat with. The others stay. I come back alone if no wild boar and eat you. Good deal?" Penny swallowed audibly. "Don't die," Roland said while he gripped her shoulder. "Thanks, super helpful," Penny replied. "I mean it," Roland said quietly. "I know." Penny adjusted her crossbow and checked her bolts. "If I'm not back by dawn, assume I'm digesting." "Penny," Roland started. "What else am I supposed to do?" Penny said with distress, looking from Roland to Lymphocytus. "It's this, or we all get eaten now." She followed the ogre into the forest with the predator at her side, leaving the others behind in terrible silence. The forest was darker away from camp. Penny relied entirely on the predator's signals, ears swiveling, pace changing. After what felt like hours, she finally saw movement. A wild boar rooting through undergrowth. "Ooh, wild boar!" the ogre roared with delight. The boar bolted. Penny's shot went wide. "You need to be quiet," Penny snapped under her breath. The ogre waved the complaint away lazily. Yeah, I know, but you mess up. If you still mess up, I eat you. Then the cat. That's the deal." "That wasn't the deal," Penny shot back, her voice rising despite herself. "The deal was I hunt for you, not that I can't miss." The ogre shrugged, unconcerned. All right. You call it deal. Me call it not eating. Same. Almost. "This is a hostage situation, not a deal," Penny muttered. The ogre chuckled thickly. "You say hostage. Me say dinner later. Tomato, potato." They tracked in tense silence. The predator found the trail again and led them carefully through the brush. When the boar appeared this time, Penny didn't hesitate. Her bolt took it clean through the neck. "Yes," Penny breathed, nearly collapsing with relief as the tension drained out of her. "So now you won't eat us, right?" The ogre looked mildly disappointed. "Maybe not. Too bad. You have nice voice. Sound like bird." "Thanks," Penny said, still catching her breath. "I'm actually a singer." The ogre's eyes lit up with interest. "You sing? Me sing too." It picked up the boar with one hand, let its branch drag along the ground, and began to sing in a language Penny had never heard. Deep and rhythmic, the sound rumbled through the trees. "Gramon, Thurok, Man, Urkal Novem, Drashi, Katun." Penny listened, surprised by the weight of it. "Wow, never heard anything quite like it," Penny said, genuinely impressed. The ogre beamed proudly and turned to walk in a completely different direction than the one they had come from. "Respect. Come back sometime," the ogre said, pointing vaguely into the trees. "We over there." Penny blinked after it. "Why are you going that way then? Aren't you going home?" she asked. The ogre shook its head as it kept walking. "Me not now. Feels right." It glanced back at her and grinned. "We sing again. When you go over there, you be popular. Maybe eaten. You never know. So long, small one." Then it disappeared into the forest. When Penny returned to camp, they practically tackled her, nearly knocking her over. "You're alive!" Roland exclaimed, grabbing her shoulders and quickly checking her for injuries. "Obviously," Penny said dryly. Roland frowned in disbelief. "Did you really hunt a boar, or did it—" "I hunted a boar," Penny cut in. "It sang afterward. It was actually kind of nice." "It sang," Lymphocytus repeated, staring at her. "Yeah," Penny said with a shrug. "Ogre folk music or something. Surprisingly moving." They stood there processing that for a moment, and then they started laughing. The kind of laughter that comes when fear drains away all at once, leaving nothing but absurd relief. Lymphocytus took the final watch and woke the others hours before dawn, shaking shoulders without apology. Nobody complained. Sleep had been shallow anyway, waiting for something to go wrong. They left while darkness still pressed the forest together. Old growth, high canopy, ground soft enough to muffle footsteps. The world felt compressed upward, but open sideways. room to move if things went bad. The predator drifted ahead of Penny, sometimes visible as a shape, other times just movement in shadows. Roland noticed the forest gradually releasing its grip as they walked. Trees became more distinct, spaces between them clearer. His eyes were adjusting, or the light was changing, hard to tell which. Lymphocytus stayed quiet, but his attention worked constantly, measuring distances, evaluating terrain. Then he saw tracks, fresh ones for once. Not paws, not hooves, not anything with clear feet. The ground was pressed in long, shallow curves, like something with low center of gravity had stood still a long time, weight distributed across multiple points. The impressions repeated irregularly, always in groups, always at consistent spacing. "What is it?" Penny came up beside him, curious but wary. "These aren't normal." He was deep into his thought. Roland squinted down. "Look normal to me. Something walked here." No, Lymphocytus's mind was already flipping through mental catalogs, books he'd studied, parchments with margin notes, bad woodcut illustrations. Creatures that didn't move like animals, that stood, observed, changed position without walking between points. Long-armed, hunched, often in groups, appearing where things were traded, gathered, abandoned. He smacked his forehead, frustrated with himself for not seeing it sooner. "Gnolls! We encountered gnolls!" Penny frowned, processing. "And you're just figuring this out now? By looking at tracks instead of having recognized them when they attacked us?" The illustrations weren't accurate. Lymphocytus stood, brushing dirt from his hands. But the tactics, the behavior, it fits. It all fits now. Roland looked skeptical. "Gnolls? Aren't those little rat dogs you can just kick if they get too close?" "You're thinking of kobolds." Lymphocytus gestured at the tracks. "Gnolls are humanoid dogs. That's what attacked us. And these tracks," he pointed, "lead the same direction we're going." Penny adjusted her crossbow strap, already calculating. "Then we'll just have to be smart. They know we're coming. They don't know when. Probably think we're still sleeping, and by the time we arrive, morning shift won't have started yet." She turned to Eldrin, wanting confirmation. "Right?" Eldrin let his gaze follow the ground, bushes, the direction everything pointed. Then he nodded slowly, something settling in his expression like pieces fitting together. "Gnolls hunt in shifts." His voice was quiet, matter-of-fact. "Those who walked here weren't hunting. They were watching, counting, remembering." His gaze stayed fixed northwest, same direction they were traveling. "They don't think you're sleeping. They think you're moving carefully, like prey that's learned." Brief pause while he let that sink in. Morning shift starts late. Guards now are tired. Relief thinks the night was quiet. If you move now, you choose where contact happens, not them. The predator circled the tracks, sniffing, froze briefly, continued. Focused, but not stressed. That was something, at least. They walked for hours up steep slopes until trees thinned and ground leveled gradually. Trunks stood sparser, light filtering through even before sunrise. More tracks here, old, new, overlapping. None they needed to follow, but confirming what they already knew. This was land that was used. The air changed, damper, more open. A fen spread out like scar tissue across the landscape. Low vegetation, soft ground, water that didn't pool but never fully disappeared either. Time stretched here. Steps had to be placed carefully. Paths existed, but they were old, treacherous. The predator lost pace, irritated at wet fur and paws. Eldrin moved slower, more deliberate. Roland felt fatigue returning, not as pain, but as weight settling into bones and joints. Penny held them together from behind, making sure nobody lagged too far, nothing got forgotten. A vulture had started circling overhead at some point, patient and ominous. When the fen finally ended, the sky was lighter. That brief, uncomfortable transition period between night and dawn. Then the world opened at their feet. Ground simply gave way. Forest stopped like someone had cut it with scissors. Ahead, land dropped into a wound of stone, shadow, fog. Walls fell steep, carved through with cracks and ledges. Far below, dark openings in mountainside. Sounds behaved wrong, echoing strangely or not at all. "Here we are," Eldrin said, a crooked grin flickering across his face, eyes a little too bright. "From here on, things get interesting."